Join me in BacklogBusters as we explore the history and gameplay of this short yet charming Banjo-Kazooie racer. You're watching Pixel Quick, and this is Forgotten Treasures. Originally announced as Diddy Kong Pilot at E3 2001, the game was altered to Banjo-Pilot after it was delayed with concerns of quality, at which point Rare were picked up by Microsoft, losing the rights to use Diddy Kong and other Nintendo characters. The game would release in January of 2005 and go on to achieve less than stellar reviews. That's not to say the game was all bad, it still got around a 7 out of 10 average through major reviewers like GameSpot, IGN, and Eurogamer. Banjo-Pilot has 16 tracks to race on through 4 different modes, including a Grand Prix and a time trial mode. It also contains 9 playable characters, of course including Banjo and Kazooie, but also all of the other characters we've come to love from the series like Mumbo Jumbo, Gruntilda, Bottles, and even characters like the Jinjo. It's at this point that many of you will be seeing the similarities between Banjo-Pilot and Mario Kart. They don't stop here. Throughout the tracks, you can find honeycombs to pick up which will give you power-ups like coconuts and UFOs in order to hinder your opponents or help yourself. You'll also find boost rings as opposed to boost pads to speed through sections of the course.
I, on the other hand, have much less experience with Banjo-Kazooie, only having finished the first game a long time ago, but I did recently play on the N64, which I absolutely loved. And since Banjo-Pilot started development as a sequel to that game, I'm interested to find if this recaptures any of the magic of Diddy Kong Racing. Well, just to rip the band-aid off, some of my favorite things about Diddy Kong Racing are missing. Banjo and his crew are bolted into their aircraft with no way to hop into a kart or hovercraft. And while not surprising because this game made the jump from the N64 to the GBA, it is sad that the overworld you'll explore in between races is also gone, replaced with a much less exciting menu. But thankfully some things like the boost trick make the cut, so you'll be able to release the gas right as you go through a boost ring to gain a more sparkly, more green, more powerful boost. Plus, in general, the flying feels good with the extra freedom of movement and things like a quick turn, making it easy and fun to navigate these tracks and preventing me from just holding forward all race like some other GBA racing games.
I really love the flying too. The verticality the game offers by putting you in planes rather than karts definitely helps to offer a degree of challenge, especially on skinnier courses when picking up boosts and items. You can sometimes pick them up without even having to move due to the track constraints. The planes work well enough for a GBA game, and I don't really have any complaints about the way they control either. As a replacement to karts or other vehicles, they implemented the planes well, and in terms of how responsive and snappy they feel, it's about as good as it can be with its current system. I wouldn't say it feels perfect, but it's certainly more than adequate.
On the item front though, the red and blue balloons of Diddy Kong Racing are gone, which is a little sad as they allowed for a little more strategy as you could choose between offensive and defensive items, replaced instead with a random item honeycomb to fit in more with Mario and his friends. But that alignment brings with it an imitator of the dreaded blue shell, a flying saucer that homes into whoever's unlucky enough to be in first place, which is where Banjo-Pilot first stood out to me, as you can hold L and tap a direction to do a barrel roll, and if timed right, you'll not only dodge the collision, but you'll also gain a little bit of boost. And this kind of blew me away, since 8 games in, Mario still relies on a random drop, but here I had a moment to react and maybe come out on top, which made this normally unstoppable force feel more fair and like a mechanic to master, rather than a random occurrence. I just love this extra bit of strategy and wrinkle in a traditional seeming Mario Kart item.
I also really like the items, even as similar as they are to Mario Kart. Many of the items have some degree of homing, which can sometimes feel unfair when the game does a fairly poor job of explaining that you actually even have the option to dodge these things in the first place. The same applying to the plane's basic shot, which I didn't even discover until 3 races in, when I hit the button accidentally. I can forgive this though, since you can still play through the game easily enough without your dodge or basic shot as long as you put in some strategic item use. In classic Banjo-Kazooie fashion, there are many things to collect over the course of each race, namely musical notes which will earn you pages based on how many notes you collect throughout each race. These in turn can be used to buy cheats from Cheeto, yet another returning character. It would sadly also be his last real appearance in any game, besides a cameo in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts as an exhibit in Banjo Land, a museum-type level made to represent the days of old. R.I.P. Cheeto, you were barely remembered.
Now, I don't remember the history of Cheeto like Nesp does, but what I do know is that they finally gave me the power to catch back up and win a race even if an unlucky item sent me all the way to the back, as the cheats they offer are actually game mechanics in the form of globos, which once unlocked will start to appear on courses, and if you find them and land a shot on them, you can activate their power once per race. The green globos place a boost ring that grants you an invincible autopilot for a short time, where the purple globos set out a chain of boost, with each one giving a seemingly higher than normal amount of boost, and if you manage to line up all three in quick succession, gives you an even larger boost at the end. I just really enjoyed that the cheats here added more wrinkles to the formula and a little bit of extra strategy around when to use them, and since they can only be hit with your default weapon, you have to give up a valuable item to even attempt to activate them. My biggest issues with this game mainly stem from having played Diddy Kong Racing, which is more courses, more varied boss battles, and walls. I had to remind myself that this is a GBA game, and not the true sequel to Diddy Kong Racing that I very much want. Because while the flat 2D courses work well for Mario Kart, trying to stay within the track bounds and out of the slow parts of the air while flying around is harder to judge than when you're just flat on the ground in Mario Kart. Diddy Kong Racing never had the issue because you could see a canyon wall coming up and know to turn to avoid it.
I completely agree. On the GBA, the track turns are sometimes hard to see coming, especially on tracks that have no real objects on the outer limits, meaning you can see a turn far too late, turn sharply, and then miss an item or a boost for something that sometimes just doesn't feel like your fault. Similarly, boosts and items feel like they render slightly too late, which can lead to a mad dash to the other side of the track where you'll either barely make it or miss and waste a ton of time going almost sideways on track.
Banjo-Pilot is a fun game, and it does manage to capture a lot of what made the planes in Diddy Kong Racing fun to fly. Comparing this to Super Circuit on the GBA reminded me how bad I am at the flat Mario Kart games, with me having a way easier time and more enjoyable time playing Banjo-Pilot, with its great controls, fun characters, and great music, all borrowed from the Banjo series. But I do feel the limitations of the GBA pushing back against what this game wants to be, or maybe just what I wanted it to be. So no, it's not the true Diddy Kong Racing sequel I wanted, but it's closer than I would have guessed for a GBA game. And I left this game wanting to play more, just like when I finished Diddy Kong Racing. So thank you to Nesp for putting this game on my radar, convincing me to play through it, and inviting me to come talk about the interesting things it does. And if you'd like to see me clear more games off my backlog, or just suggest a game I should play next, come join me over at BacklogBusters. And thank you again, Nesp, for having me on.
Thanks for joining me. Banjo-Pilot was definitely not the next big thing when it comes to arcade racer games, but for fans of those games and for fans of Banjo-Kazooie, there is a lot to love about it. Are there better racers out there? Sure. Are there better Banjo-Kazooie games out there? Yes, of course. But if you ask me now whether I'd play 2D Mario Kart or Banjo-Pilot, it wouldn't be such an easy choice anymore. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you don't miss any of our future content. If you liked this video, here's another one that you might enjoy.